Hi guys, and welcome to Stayorgo Poker Official Chapter 3. So I would recommend, if you haven't already done so, watching in order the official introduction, the official Chapter 1, which is entitled Getting Started, and then the official Chapter 2, which is entitled Playing Aggressively. Now, you know that Stayorgo Poker is different to most coaching sites in as much as we are encouraging a certain style of play and we are coaching on a specific style of play rather than on generic poker as a whole. And it may suit some and may not suit others. But if you're trying to adopt this style, then this chapter is very, very important. In fact, it's a very important chapter anyway, but particularly with this style. So we had our first introduction, just a 3-minute video. Then we had a getting started, chapter 1. And then we went straight into playing aggressively. Now, why would any coaching site, for the right off the bat, go into playing aggressively? Why wouldn't they be going into some more of the, aspects of the game? Well, that is the style. The style is playing aggressively. Okay, so we're talking about going to the flop as the pre-flop aggressor most of the time. I probably go to the flop as a pre-flop aggressor about 90 to 95% of the time. In the latter stages for sure. When it goes to flop, I'm nearly always the pre-flop aggressor. So this chapter is about continuation betting. And what is continuation bet? A continuation bet, or otherwise known as C-bet, is a bet that you put in on the flop that comes from the person that raised, or the person that 3-bet, the person that was the aggressor before the flop. And it's called a continuation bet. Because by being the aggressor pre-flop, you have what we call range advantage. And you still have range advantage on most flops. So it's a continuation of that range advantage. So in general, you want to be C-betting most boards. And by most boards, I would probably say you want to be C-betting about 60 to 65% of the time. Okay, so don't automatically C-bet. There's some boards where you just don't want to C-bet at all. And there's others where you might hit it really big and want to check raise, for example. So what we're looking at is that when you continuation bet, we're looking first off at what the board texture is like. So what do we mean by board texture? Well, is it a dry flop? Is it a wet flop? An example of a dry flop would be 2-6 king rainbow. An example of a wet flop would be 7-8 jack two-tone board, that sort of type of thing. So typically we're going to get more success from a continuation bet on a dry flop than we will on a wet flop. The reason being that there's not many draws that are going to call you on a dry flop. So they're good boards to continuation bet on. So what you want to take into consideration is the board texture. And I would recommend to continuation bet on most dry boards, whether you've got it or whether you haven't. Okay, whether you're in position or whether you're out of position. With position, I know people make a lot about position. It is very important. But what you've got to remember, if you're going to go to the flop as the pre-flop aggressor all the time, then if you're in position, they're probably going to check to the razor anyway. So if we take their check to the razor almost as a default, not many people donk lead, you're effectively sort of making the first action after the natural response anyway. So when you're out of position, for you to continuation bet is more normal as the pre-flop aggressor than it would be if you weren't the pre-flop aggressor. So bearing in mind that in position they're probably going to check to you, and out position you can lead. If you're in position you bet and they've checked you, your bet has slightly more weight for sure than if you're out of position and you just lead out. But being the pre-flop aggressor, it's naturally expected for you to bet. And I would say about 60 to 65% of the time to do that. So let's talk about, like, if it's a wet flop, for now we're not going to really be c-betting too much unless you've got a semi-bluff like a flush draw or something like that, or a straight draw and overs. If you've got a strong draw like that, or you've hit it, then it's all right to continuation bet. But other than that, just check those flops if you haven't hit them and they're wet. But when they're dry, you want to be having a stab most of the time. Now, times when you may want to have a stab is if you've got like 3 opponents or something, then you would just give up even on a dry flop. 2 opponents, obviously, it's half as likely to get through, but still maybe worth having a go with. Okay. So the other thing to think of is that if you've been called, you've raised and been called, where did that call come from? Was it early table position? Was it like in the hijack? Was it on the button? Was it in the small blind? Was it on the big blind? And let's say the board comes 8 high. Okay, so it comes, let's say, a 2-4-8 two-tone board. Okay. Now, and you've got one opponent. Now, I would be more inclined to c-bet if my opponent was in the hijack, the cutoff, or the button than I would if he was in the blinds, because pocket pairs aside, that doesn't hit the range of somebody that's called in the cutoff, the hijack, or the button. It hits more of the range of those that are called in the blinds, particularly in the big blind. So I may be more inclined to continuation bet on an 8 high board if I've just got, say, like ace king or ace x hand against a cutoff call than I would a big blind call. Now, conversely, opposite to that, let's say we get a queen high flop, for example, then I would be more inclined to continuation bet against a big blind that's called. If there's a queen and a deuce and a 3, I'm probably going to continuation bet whoever it is. But I think that it's more likely to get through against a big blind call than it would, say, a cutoff call. Because a cutoff is calling with king, queen jack suited, ace queen if he's tight, queen 10 suited, all those sort of hands. And the big blind would call those hands too, but he's also calling with the 7-8 suited, 6-7 suited, and sort of stuff like that. That hands that the cutoff probably wouldn't call with. So that's just a thing to recognise on there. And the other thing regarding your c-bet is you watch out for resistant styles. When people get to know you and know how you play, and they're going to try and counter it, and the way they counter it will be by calling your raises, calling your flop bets, with the idea that when you shut down that they're going to take it on the turn, or if you're in position, take it on the river. So beware of resistant styles. Now, if you've got somebody that you recognise is adopting that he's what they call floating to take. He's floating probably with nothing to take it when you shut down on the next street. So it's called a float to take. If people are doing float to takes, they're going to be more wary when you check than when you bet. So that's something to bear in mind. And if somebody's doing that, they'll probably check behind because they'll be wary of the check, and you can perhaps take it down on the turn. Alternatively, and in general, I'm not recommending at this stage to fire a double barrel. Right? If your flop bet doesn't get through, then we tend to give up. Having said that, if you've got people that are always floating the flop, you might just want to have a second stab on the turn against those type of opponents. But be very careful. Our whole process is a small ball approach to try not to lose to lose a big pot. We're trying not to lose a big pot. We're trying to get a gradual accumulation of chips by plus EV moves that keeps us up with the average stack, and races will come and rate will be lost and won, and callers will come, callers will go. The general principle of increasing our stack by making plus EV plays. When I spoke about 3-betting and raising, I was saying you want to get 70% of folds. So just in itself, if you 3-bet and they fold 70% of the time, you're going to make a profit. If you raise and they fold 70% of the time, providing their standards or raise sizes, you're going to make a profit. So if you can get 70% of folds in those situations, that's the way to play. Continuation bet, you don't need as much as 70% success rate. Okay. Bear in mind, sometimes you want to get called, but for now we're talking about the times when you want them to fold when you haven't really got it. You're always going to be betting a consistent size. Now, let's say, for example, that you adopt to just bet half the pot all of the time. It's not a bad strategy. Maybe half pot's a little bit too high, but we just use it for this example. Wet board, dry board, flush draw, hit it, missed it, whatever. 50% of the pot all the time. No way you can be exploited. It's not completely optimal, but we just use this as an example Now, you only need to be getting folds. I would aim to be getting folds at least 50% of the time. So we've gone from the 70% pre-flop with our raise and our 3-bets to trying to get our c-bets through 50% of the time. Why do we need to only get them through 50% of the time? Well, even if you're betting as much as half the pot, you've only got to win 1 out of 3 of them for it to make a profit. Okay, as long as you're getting more than 1 out of 3, because you're getting 2 to 1 for your money. So let's say there's 1,000 in the pot and you continuation bet 500. 450 would probably be a better figure, but let's say you continuation bet 500 and you decide to do that on all boards. Then, you know, if let's say that it gets through once every 2 times, then that means that you put 500 in, and the first time it doesn't get through, so you've lost 500. The second time you put 500 in, you get 1,500 back, including your 500. So over those 2 hands, you're plus EV of 50% because you've put 1,000 in, you got 1,500 back. So you're looking to get folds 50% of the time. Now, all of these plus EV moves where you're getting 70% of the folds pre-flop, 50% of folds for your continuation bet are going to be increasing your stack gradually as the time goes on, callers and races aside. And that's what tournament play is all about. That is exactly what tournament play is about. So, just looking to see if there's anything else. Actually, I think that's pretty much it about continuation betting. I'm going to send out some hand histories that relate to continuation betting. The one thing that I've said, if you do want to vary your raise sizes, don't do it based on your hand strength. Don't give your opponent anything that from your bet sizing that can give them an idea of what sort of hand you've got. You know, whether it's a c-bet, whether you've got it, you know. Now, what is fairly commonplace is that people continuation bet less amount-wise, less amount-wise, not less often. They continuation bet more often on dry boards, but a less amount. They continuation bet less on wet boards, but a bigger amount. So if you do want to vary your raise sizes, do it based on board texture, not on hand strength. I hope these is useful, and I hope that you're getting I've had Craig, one of the guys that's subscribed to the channel. I got a Facebook message from him saying that he played 7 tournaments today and he final tabled 4 of them. And I watched him play and I saw him finish second in the last one. I don't know if he knew I was watching him play. I just watched the heads up. I didn't want to say anything because I don't like putting people off. But yeah, so if you've got any sort of feedback like that, I mean, that's fantastic. Congratulations, Craig. And yeah, so hopefully you guys can adopt this. I hope this exercise on continuation betting, this video on continuation betting is useful. And obviously we're going to flop as a pre-flop aggressor. So we're always going to be the one that is continuation betting, because a continuation bet is only a continuation bet if it comes from the pre-flop aggressor. So it's a very, very important thing. So I hope you can take these points I've put on board, and I hope that you can implement it and pick the right spots where you're getting 50% of folds at least with your continuation bets, and either stick to a rigid sizing for all of them or vary it based on board texture but not on hand strength. Best of luck, guys, and I'll see you at the tables. Cheers.